oh yeah, like space shooter, but really you're a duck.
Yeah.
Or something. And then, which, could be cool.
Was
and
that
then,
duck, the shooter duck game or whatever?
Duck
Hunt.
Duck.
Yeah.
Shooter Duck
Goose,
right?
Shooter
Is that
it?
Butterscotch. Hey everybody, welcome to episode 90 of Coffee with Butterscotch, the game dev comedy podcast, the Butterscotch Shenanigans. I'm Seth and I'm the games programmer.
I'm Adam and I'm the multiplier of numbers.
I'm Sam and I make pictures.
And today is March 20th, 2017, 320 Blaze it, everybody.
Yep.
Also, warning, anything can happen on this show. There's going to be profanity, lewdness, bunch of other stuff. So if you're a child or if you just don't like hearing people talk about stuff, then quit listening to this and basically everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, so we got a lot of news items this week.
Can we talk about 320 right now, though? Because I think it's worth talking about briefly.
Yeah.
Like for 320 no scope? Is that
320 no scope blaze?
It's important because it's, it comes after Pi Day.
Mm-hmm.
It's the first 20th after Pi Day.
I think we should just start an arbitrary celebration day.
Isn't that what all celebrations are?
Yeah.
People are like, I'm bored. Let's come up with a reason for a party every time this happens.
Every time we get bored. And then boredom is a thing for celebration.
Yeah.
We always make jokes about 420 in the office, even though none of us are smokers.
I think they're called doobers.
None of us are doobers.
Doobsters.
But I think it's because we had a joke about 360 no scope, and now it's turned into 420. But now it's
420 no scope.
Anytime there's a 20 in anything, that someone in the office says like whatever. It's a 320 blaze it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just blaze it is just a phrase.
But it is confusing because now that there's a 3 in front of it, it should be a no scope.
320 no scope.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a rough no scope though, because you end up going slightly in a different direction than when you started, and then you just kind of fly off course.
I'm not sure if that requires more or less skill. You turn
it
less,
requires less skill to do it, but more skill to sort of come out of it.
Maybe it should be
because it just really means you needed to turn a little bit one way and instead turned all the way around.
Actually,
right, you could turn 40 degrees the other direction.
Yeah, that would have been a little more convenient.
Right, because the idea there is like
guess.
if somebody is like 180 degrees behind you, then you do a 360 because you're determined to keep going the way that you're currently
right.
going.
But you just want to see them
to shoot them,
right?
Without a scope.
Yeah.
Actually, honestly, a 360 with a scope would be way more impressive.
That's much harder. Yeah.
So what's up with that? Anyways,
what is up with that?
Listen, we got some news this week.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's go.
First thing, the iTunes,
Also
known as the App Store, debuted an indie section of the App Store.
Yeah.
Have any of you seen it? Because I don't actually have an iDevice of any sort.
We saw some pictures. We
of it.
saw screenshots of it.
That's
People
true.
sent us some
Okay.
screenshots. It looks great.
Yeah, it looks really good. And they got some good.
We're in it.
It's got a good prominent placement, so that's nice. And apparently it's a permanent thing. It's just like going to be there.
If it's permanent, how do people access it? Is it going to be always kind of on the top of the store? Or are they going to scroll down a bit and see
my
the indie section?
assumption it'll be one of those sort of categories, just like on the store. Or maybe it'll have always one of those sort of slugs, the smaller little feature slug things that are
right.
It's interesting though, because a lot of mobile games are indie. Actually, I guess a lot of games, period.
Most of them.
Most games
are
now
indie.
are indie games. I mean, indie used to be just a category of game, because there were games, and then there was like the 6 indie games.
Oh, I think the way that the App Store is using that term is people who can't afford advertising. I think
that's basically if you don't have a marketing department.
You don't have a publisher. You can't,
yeah.
Well, a lot of them do have publishers.
That's true.
But they're smaller publishers though, right? Because if you take like Devolver Digital or something, right? It's like, yeah, they're doing okay, but still compared to like EA, nothing,
Right. Well, they're an indie publisher.
They're an indie publisher, right?
What does that mean?
It means they also can't afford
I think now it's a
advertising.
difference between, so you think about EA or Activision or whatever, they're not publishers so much as they acquire companies.
Yeah, they're purchasers.
Right? Yeah. So once you've been acquired by them, you're not indie anymore. You're an investment,
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Is like if your studio is owned by someone else, then you're not indie anymore. Is that where the line
Maybe
is
that's
now?
where the line.
I mean, that's where the line is.
It used to be
me,
publishers,
but
yeah.
but that doesn't actually. I think the line just depends on what you're trying to accomplish, right? So I think I honestly just think that for something like the App Store, it's that there needs to be a place for stuff that is good that cannot be successful on its own because it doesn't have
the marketing power.
Yeah, it doesn't have the marketing power to get there. and which is actually I think the best definition that there is
For indie.
For indie.
It's
the most
just your mom
constructive
and
and
pop
useful one.
game dev shop.
Yeah, and they need some assistance because they don't have the resources just to throw behind stuff. Which is exactly why I also think this is a really cool move.
Yeah,
on the
I'm
part of the
super
App
glad
Store.
they did it.
Are they mostly featuring paid stuff or is it
It's a nice mix.
a mix of
It's
stuff?
good.
Okay.
They got a lot of paid stuff in there. Way more than you would usually see,
you
given
normally
the
see.
percentage of games that are actually paid.
Yeah, I like the idea of them actually curating and highlighting a section of stuff that tends to be weighted towards good pay up front stuff.
Oh, yeah.
To try to kind of push the market a little bit in that direction.
Yeah.
It's like
So I think it's
a
a
boutique.
I think it's a good. It's
Oh,
a
yeah.
good. I mean, it's good for us.
good for us.
obviously.
Yeah.
Because the App Store, I mean, it's a zero sum game, right? I mean, if people see your game, then that
They
means
didn't see somebody else.
your game is taking up a good visual spot that somebody else didn't get. So it's good for us. So I'm cool. I'm cool.
I'm
with
cool
it.
with
I'm
it,
cool with it. Also, speaking of indie games, our buddies over at Happy Badger Studio here in St. Louis just successfully kickstarted a little hovercraft game.
Racing.
Actually, it's not that little
Yeah, it's pretty
anymore.
big now.
It's getting pretty big.
Yeah, and it's getting towards done. So congratulations, guys. They just needed some extra cash to finish up development of the thing.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
close. They're super close.
And they're one of the a lot of independent studios work in this fashion where basically they have some kind of other day job thing that's going on that they use to fund their development on the side. Hive Jump was the same way from Graphite Lab here, and Smugglecraft is the game from Happy Badger Studio, and they're doing the same thing. They do web dev by day and then Smugglecraft by night, sort of Batman style.
Right.
It sounds like we've got a tendency in this region to name things with two nouns put together.
It's a good way to do it.
There's two things put together: Smugglecraft, Hive Jump, Crashlands. There's Battle Cakes coming out.
Mm-hmm.
It's punchy.
Crash Lands available now. I'm just reading things around me now. it looks like everything is just 2 words.
We don't have
Everything is 2 words.
Google Play, App Store,
Oh God.
Steam.
But anyway, I mean, it kind of came down to the wire there, where they're
Yeah,
I
it was your
think
last day
they were at
passed
like
it.
2/3 funded on the last day, and then all of a sudden it's just like an explosion of backers
Yeah.
just poured in.
Yeah,
and
really
funded.
curious
That must
to
have been a
hear the
roller
story.
coaster of a day. I
I'm
think.
sure. Yeah.
No.
You wake up, you're like, oh fuck.
Yeah.
And then you go to bed, you're like, oh, nice.
So I'm curious. I'm curious what they. I'm sure they had a hand in it. That looks like they must have pushed
some marketing
somewhere.
PR
So,
push
yeah.
of some sort.
I'm really curious to get the details
Yeah.
on what happened there.
I'm sure we'll hear about it at some point down the line.
Yeah, it's a cool game though. So you can go Google
Smugglecraft.
Smugglecraft. I'm pretty sure they got some good SEO on that thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's the only thing that comes up.
Yep.
Yep. And we also had a little sale of Crashlands. It ended yesterday, so
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
we forgot
you all
to
missed
take
it.
it was a sale on mobile. Presumably, if you're listening to this podcast, you already have Crashlands
Somewhere.
somewhere.
Yeah.
So, that's fine.
It'll be on sale again.
We have a couple important pieces of Sam news this week.
The Sam Bulletin.
This is Sam Bulletin. For starters, Sam almost started a neighbor war with a pipe blaster.
Well, no, I didn't. Our dad did.
Yeah.
So this is hilarious. So our dads came up to help us landscape to some of our outdoors stuff because we got these houses, but we haven't done anything to the outside of them for the most part, aside from kind of cleaning up the garbage.
Well, we all kind of moved in later in the year when it's dry as fuck outside. It's the sun is.
You don't want to
1,000,000
plant stuff
degrees.
in the middle of summer, as it turns out. So
Yeah,
it
you
just
can't do
dies.
it. You can't do anything.
And you can't even do it in the evening because then you just get eaten by
So I mean, the
mosquitoes.
best you can do is just kind of like clean things up a bit, and
Right.
then leave it.
Mhm.
So we all had these sort of barren landscapes, and so the dads came down to take care of that for us with a truck and a bunch of tools and a bunch of know-how, all of which we don't have.
We don't have
in
any
any
of those
capacity.
things.
So it was super good. They worked basically the whole week, which was hilarious because they'd come into the office because the office is in Seth's house, and they'd be like, "All right, we're gonna go do all these things out back," and then a couple hours later, we'd see them and they'd be like groaning. Dad is always like, "Oh, my back, back." But so they fixed up a bunch of stuff on my house, and it looks great. But they put this pipe, so they have this extendable sort of downspout pipe that you attach to the bottom of, like where your gutter,
Your downspout.
your downspout. So where your gutter goes over, and then there's a pipe that goes down to move the water away from the house
Because you don't want water getting down
in your foundation.
In your foundation,
Yeah.
you got to shoot it away at warp speed.
So where do you shoot it away though? In a place where you have neighbors.
You should
Onto your
shoot it
neighbor's
onto
property.
your trees.
So-
Onto your neighbor's driveway.
Yeah.
Because they have a drain on their driveway.
Exactly.
And, it's
The thing
meant
is-
for taking water.
So this is common. The thing is, my water was already being shot in that direction. It just didn't look so intensely like it was being shot in that direction.
Well, I mean, it was basically like 3 feet between the side of your house and their
probably like 5 feet or so.
driveway.
But the thing is that when water would come down that downspout, then what that meant was that the water coming out of the downspout would land on the lawn first, which has a bunch of course,
dirt,
rocks, other debris. And then that tidal wave of
wash onto
garbage
the-
would go onto their driveway. So Dad put this downspout in this extendable pipe that actually, instead of just letting it shoot onto the yard first and then drain into their driveway, actually shoots it just into their driveway. Directly.
Just pure, delicious water.
Yeah.
Just unadulterated.
So it actually is better for the neighbor.
Than it was.
However, I could see how he got freaked out because when you get home, or when I got home, I was looking at it and you can just see this pipe just like pointing directly at his house. And then so it's a brown pipe. And then there's a white splash block, which is like a little sort of chunk of concrete that you put down to make sure that the water goes where you're trying to make it go. So there's this white sort of like cap on the end point where it just looks like a gun pointing at the sun.
enjoy your water fountain.
Yeah, so it took this thing that was already happening and actually happening badly, and it fixes the prophet from an engineering standpoint.
Highlighted that it was doing it in the first
Highlighted
place.
that
It's
it
a
was
framing problem.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I see this and I'm like, cool, great, water's going away from my house. I don't think anything about it. Neighbor knocks on my door. He's like, hey, so there's like, it looks like you're going to be shooting water into my driveway. And I was like, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you mean still.
Still, yeah.
Yeah.
He's like, well, so I just, I like my drain's clogged in the back, which again, not my problem, but
Yeah, you should unclog that drain.
You should
And
unclog
actually,
the drain.
it might be your fault that it's clogged. to
that's
begin
what I was
with.
thinking. I talked to Dad about it
Because
afterwards.
you've been blasting dirt into
Yeah,
his
so this thing is like
driveway.
this should solve all of the problems, but of course, again, it looks
Except for the existing clog.
Yeah.
yeah. Aside from that one,
Yeah.
but so it looks like a thing pointing at his house, which freaky. So I talked to him, and then I called Dad, and I was like, hey, so like, can I just move this pipe or something? Because the neighbor guy's freaked out about it, pointing at his house, and Dad's like, no. He's so hilarious, and so he was like, well, he just went through of course the logical reasons. No,
like we just talked about.
we just talked about. It actually fixes everything. And I was like, yeah, but the guy's going to be extremely upset. Like, he was visibly agitated.
Nobody wants a neighbor war.
Yeah, and you
Yeah.
can easily start a neighbor war over some of this like little small shit, and then I'm just never going to be able to like look him in the eye when I come out of the house because he's going to be like angry at me for having a thing pointed at his house that's technically helping him, but he won't see the light about it. So
And then he's going to
But
start
there's
doing
a question: is it helping him as much as just not dumping the water on his driveway at all?
yes, because it's always going to land on his driveway because it's a sloped thing.
It's
Anyway,
just going to slope down.
There's no way.
there's no way.
other place you can send the water.
You could
No.
probably if
His
you
driveway
attached maybe
slopes.
if you attached maybe like 10 of those 5-foot pipes together and rerouted it to sort
Well,
of
people
like
do
the
that where
entire
they have
other
like a
side
little
of the
like
house.
sort of little gutter thing they make that runs down to the road or something, right? And you just dump.
Well, the thing
it
is,
onto
the
that.
road is above his driveway.
Yeah, it'll
So
just go
if I
right
put
back
it in
in.
the road, it will just get more debris. and
Water
then go back
comes
to his
from
driveway.
the road into his driveway.
It's the same thing with mine. So it's like, I have to clean out my drain because they're on slopes. So
Yeah.
the house is level, but then of course, the driveway sort of curves down around the back.
Yeah, so I mean, the fact is,
Sounds like a design problem.
Water's getting
Yeah.
in these driveways.
Yeah. There's unless
no-
I routed it into the other neighbor's driveway. That's the only option, or my own driveway, which would be to
on the opposite side
to
of the
pipe
house.
it to the other side of the house, which is insane. So
So
the
where
thing
do
is,
they route their water?
Exactly.
Do they route it to your driveway?
Probably
they
their-
route to
probably
their own driveway,
neighbor.
and then they route to their neighbor's driveway. So everyone's passing. You take the water on one side of the house.
Everybody's sharing the
Is
water.
it
though.
actually a closed loop where just everybody's passing on to their neighbor?
I think
all the way
everybody is
back in a
passing.
circle?
Yeah, I think just you pass it to the right.
Yeah, and it goes around the block,
Yeah.
and then it comes right back around.
I'm sure it does. But yeah, so the thing is like, and it's not against the rules or like it's what you're supposed to
It's
do.
just
Like,
water.
It's water. You can't
control it.
control it. You can't.
Tide
divvy it
comes
up.
in, tide comes out.
So anyway,
What does it mean?
Dad was pretty incensed that this guy was upset about this because, of course, he shouldn't be. And so we had a hilarious chat where he's like, well, I mean, I could come and like reroute. What do you want me to do? Like reroute it around the house? The same conversation. And then we were chatting about it, and I was like, I want to avoid conflict. It's my style. So I, can you move the pipe? He was like, I'll come look at it. And then I got home, and he dug this. I don't even know. This guy's ridiculous, but like it's just
Yeah, I
perfectly.
don't know how he did it.
It just disappeared. So the pipe just disappeared,
Just
and then it
goes
like
in-
pokes out of the yard forward towards the road a little bit more, in like a little tiny divot that you can't see it anymore.
Yep.
Except now it's going right. It's like the water's still gonna go.
It's
right
gonna
in his
go
driveway,
into his driveway,
but now it's gonna go through a lot more mud and dirt and everything than it used to,
which is hilarious. So, but the thing is, we talk about this a lot. Like,
is this miswanting?
It is.
Oh,
So
yeah.
this is
Yeah.
we talk about this in game design a lot, right? Like the perception of a problem from a player standpoint.
Yeah.
it's
means
not
you need
always
to-
what the problem.
It's not always
really
what the problem is, but you do need to address it, quote unquote, right? So
Well,
you need to
but
shift
sometimes
the
you
framing.
need to actually not, because sometimes it'll ruin player experience so much to give them what they have miswanted.
Oh yeah,
That you should just dump the water right in their driveway.
exactly. Yeah. Well, we give the example of the Borderlands talk from GDC where
Yeah.
they had Skag Alley, which was
Skag Gully.
Skag Gully, which was
Scaggly.
filled with skags, which are little like sort of creepy wolf aliens. And players are always getting aggravated because they're like, there's too many skags in this place. I'm trying to go from point A to point B.
Trying to get you Skag Gully.
I'm using this as a travel location, to walk. And so the designers were like, and they tripled the number of enemies in there. And now it's no longer a place where you go to travel. You got to fight.
It's a place where you
Yeah.
fight skags.
Because people stopped complaining. Because
So maybe what I should have done was just every day just pour dirt on his driveway. And then been like, my water is washing away this dirt.
well, the thing is, you were already doing that.
I wasn't doing that.
Well, I think it's also a framing problem, right? If you just gone to him first and said, "Hey, I noticed that my downspout is basically just like throwing water on your driveway. I can just, if I move it up a bit, it's gonna pour just water instead.
You're right.
Like,
I
it's
should have
gonna look
preempted it.
like I'm just pointing it at your house, but it's actually gonna be better for both of us, right? If you just said that,
Yep, he would have been fine. You're
You
right.
would have
been
been like,
absolutely
oh,
fine.
yeah, my drain's been clogged. Maybe that's why. And you'd be
Yeah.
like, well, yeah, there you go.
yeah. The problem was he
damn.
came home to find somebody just shooting water onto his house, right? And so your natural response there is to be like, the fuck,
Right.
and get angry about it. And now you can't see the reason, right? Because
Because you're already angry.
you've been
I need my
unframed.
driveway to be dry as a bone.
Okay. To be fair though, it did rain while the spout was still there. And the driveway was totally fine. Because I'm not shooting dirt into it.
Exactly.
Anyways.
All right. So
So
then,
thanks, Dad, for
I
fixing the
guess,
problems.
then to celebrate the fixing of this pipe situation, you then baked a loaf of bread.
Yeah, so I want to talk about
So
this real
let's
quick.
talk
So I
about-
watched the Great British Bake Off show. Bake Off, whatever. It's on Netflix. It's amazing. And we were looking for some sort of
What's it
cooking
called?
show. The Great British Bake Off or Bake Show. One of the two. I can't remember. But it's on Netflix. And it's reality TV, but it's British style, which means that there's no drama. It's just about people
They just
baking
bake
stuff.
some stuff.
And so it's just a super delightful hour where these people from all walks of life are just baking stuff. And every so often they're like, John is actually a contractor by day. And they show him like hanging out with his family for like 5 seconds. And then it goes back to him baking stuff. And just like,
He's like,
the most
here's
pleasant-
a little backstory about John.
yeah, just super pleasant. And I've been looking for a little hobby to do sort of in the scarce free time that I have that's not computer related. And that also involves a lot of physical aggression because I was like, I want to punch stuff basically.
So you can knead some dough.
So I was watching
Yeah.
the show, and this guy was making bread, and he was just like punching the shit out of it. And I was like,
did he have just beefy forearms?
yeah,
and
it was
he
like a big
looked Popeye?
dude, and I was like, this is like I want to try.
This is my calling.
This might be my
Punching
thing.
Joe.
So I looked up some recipes and went to the grocery store on Saturday, got the stuff, baked this loaf, and turned out super delicious. Used no butter and all that stuff, but I think I might have like a good
This is
sort
a
of
potential
outlet.
business opportunity here, actually, because if you started a business that was sort of designed almost as like as an exercise and stress relief place, but
And
it was
then you
all
could
about
sell the bread.
We call it what? Punch a loaf. Punch loaf.
punch loaf is pretty fucking good.
It's not like pinching a loaf though.
It's different. You don't pinch it, you punch it.
Yeah.
It's
Be careful with that.
Bake punch.
the
You gotta
great
have
American
extreme-
punch
It's
off.
like punch dancing.
Adam and I once did a thing
Punch
called
bacon.
Farrell's Extreme Body Shaping,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
was really it's just kickboxing.
It's a lot of punching.
But think about if they
And you could only shape your body into just like a slightly modified version of your existing body.
Yeah, you couldn't turn it into a snake or anything.
Yeah, it was really disappointing.
Yeah.
like that's your go-to. Can I be transformed into a snake by the second?
I mean, it says extreme
It
body
did say
shaping.
extreme. Instead, what they really
Instead,
meant
it was
was
just regular body shaping.
yeah, just
this would be interesting. So,
Farrell's just regular body shape.
so what if they had what if what Farrell's did was actually acted as an alternate energy source where you guys came in, you punch stuff, right? You like jump on things, you punch things, you throw things. But every single one of those things was actually a little sort of generation surface.
Yeah, and
so,
it's hooked back into the grid, and they sell that power.
Boom.
back.
Yeah.
so that's
so you sell the training exercises.
Here's the thing: maybe they did.
well,
Or maybe in every one of the punching bags was actually just bread dough.
yeah.
Can you imagine? Oh my God.
Yeah. Who knows?
That's a lot of bread.
Who's to say?
by
But
the way.
I feel like more companies need to be sort of taking this sort of sustainable business approach.
yeah, we've
you know?
actually been we hooked up all of our keyboards so that they every time you hit them, then it fires off a little pulse of electricity, right? Because I mean, it has to anyway to send a signal, but we harvest that
yeah.
The mechanical
because you don't
energy.
need all of it that it sends.
Unfortunately,
I mean,
we can't sell it back into the grid because that's illegal in Missouri because
yeah,
Has reasons.
it's fine though. We just put it right
it's
back
a
in our
red state. What are you
computers,
going to do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
It's red because the grid is glowing so hot from all the things that are just
Yeah.
being, perpetually stuck in it.
Yeah. Also, tomorrow we have
Jam day.
Jam Day. What's a
Jam
Jam Day?
I'm pretty sure we've talked about it on lots of occasions, but Sam and Seth have both forgotten all about it.
Yeah. And maybe some of our listeners also did too as well, perhaps.
So we'll find out.
So Jam Day, we come in and we jam.
What does it mean?
We just, each of us has a problem we're trying to solve. Some kind of big thing that we need intense focus for a long period of time to do. And we come in at 8:00 in the morning and
Which is the normal time.
we just start just crunching away at it and we go until 9 p.m. just straight through.
Mhm.
So the idea of the Jam Day is it's to capture the magic that you feel when you do a game jam. So whenever people go to a game jam, they always come out of it and they're like, holy fuck, I did not know that I could do that much in a 2-day period. And the reason that you can do so much in a game jam is because during a game jam, it's the only thing that you're focused on. And it turns out that being intensely focused on a thing is just the best way to do it, right?
It also
So-
feels super good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you just completely immerse yourself in a problem. And so you don't run errands. You don't cook dinner. You don't check emails. You don't pick up the phone. You just literally just detach yourself from the world.
You're like, I got this problem, and this is my only problem.
This is my only problem for the day. And you just, the whole day, you just go at it. And we all have all kinds of really tough things that we're tackling for the next game. And it's just a really good way to get around to it.
It'll also be the first one that both Tifa and Monique have been around for.
Yep.
So Andy and Sure have done a few jam days by this point.
Yeah, it's old hat
They're
for them.
veterans. I remember, I think after the first one, both of them were like, "Oh my god!"
Actually, we didn't even start doing it in the office until like November.
I
or
think
something.
November. Yeah,
So we actually,
It used to be something that we did quite often before we brought people in. And then after we hired people, we were like, oh, like, I don't know if we can like ask this of our new people. Is this too much? And then we thought, fuck it, let's do it. And so
Yeah.
we pitched the idea and everybody was like, yes.
Yeah.
And we did it. And
and after the first one, everyone was like, "Fuck
I was
yeah!"
like, can we do this again next week? Like, no, we got
We're
to
like, you guys need to calm down.
you got to pace it. Cause again, there's a lot of game studios do crunch where they have people work these kinds of hours, but just every day
for months.
for months and months and months.
but it's also because they're trying to meet deadlines set by management,
right.
Not because they have an interesting, concrete, just problem to go out and try to solve. It's because it's basically somebody else has made their problem your problem, which is they promised a deadline to somebody, and they're like, "Oh, I promised this deadline, so now you guys just have to work
Now
more."
you're fucked now.
Yeah,
Enjoy.
yeah, which is just a difference.
So what's the difference between crunch and jam? We've talked about this before, but I think
So
it's good.
jam is short term, 1 day. It's to solve a very particular problem,
or 2 days, I would say. I think you can do a jam for up to 2 days, probably.
and it's bottom up. It's not to hit a deadline or whatever. It's not imposed from on high or whatever. It's everybody jumping in and just saying, yes, like I have this one thing that if I didn't have to worry about anything else.
So it's basically proactive, whereas crunch is reactive, right?
Crunch
Because
is,
I think-
oh shit, we've made a mistake.
Yeah, because we've never been like, oh, we need to get this thing done. Everybody's got to work for until it's done, which would essentially be crunch.
It's not deadline driven.
It's essentially like months in advance. You say, oh, I want to just have a good, huge chunk of time to dig into a problem. So I'm
Yeah.
going to do that.
Well, and I
now,
think, and
as
it's
opposed to
and
later.
it's to try to capture that feeling of just how badass it is to just completely go all in on a problem that's really, really hard, and at the end of the day, either have solved it or have made really, really significant progress that just kind of kickstarts the rest of your, next few weeks or whatever.
Well, and for
So-
me, these are particularly useful for getting ready to try a completely new thing where you need to learn a new skill or need to do some research and development to learn new technology or whatever, because those things are always, you always end up just kind of spreading that out over, you know, because you have the other stuff you're working on anyway. And so then you spread out over every day. You might take 10 minutes or an hour or whatever, reading up on this next thing you want to go do. But you don't actually have the opportunity just to go do it because you're too busy doing other stuff. And so I like to use jam days, but don't always, but I like to use them for like really hardcore R&D days where it's just dive into a new technology or dive into something and learn enough that when you come out the next day, you say, okay, I can now go deploy this for real, right? I can go use this on an actual problem that is essential to what I'm trying to accomplish.
Yeah. And it speaks to the quality of time and how spending 5 minutes on a thing is not the same as spending an hour on a thing. And so like if you spent 5 minutes a day for 12 days, that's not the same as sitting down for an hour straight, right? You just don't get as much out of it. And similarly, spending 6 hours straight on one problem is, again, it's much better than spending 1 hour a day for 6 days, right? And
yeah, but if you spend an hour a day once a week, then you're back to it not starting over again. Yeah, because you have to start over every week.
Yeah, so it just kind of speaks to the idea that the more time you spend with a problem, the more context you have, the less time you have to waste relearning the same stuff over and over again, and you just get to go really, really deeply into stuff. So it's super fun. We do it pretty regularly, and that's what's going to be happening this week.
Super exciting.
Yeah. All right. And then the one last kind of interesting news bulletin from the past week is a little bit of business management news, which is we now have 7 people in the studio, and there's 3 of us who are the owners or the boss folk,
Technically
management
bosses.
yeah, and we are
middle management,
starting to learn more and more what it means to have 7 people instead of 3 or 4 or 5 or whatever, which is we're just entering pure chaos mode.
Well, I think it's because it's the development of systems to control entropy is absolutely necessary as you get bigger. And this happened actually just when we brought Adam on.
Yeah.
When you finally joined the studio, it was the case that the direct lines of communication that was just Seth and I was just one beam of communication that had to go back and forth. And then suddenly with a third person, there's actually 3
there's
beams.
3 now. Yeah.
So you got to make sure that if you say something to one person, if the other person needs to know it, that you also get the information to them.
Yeah.
Right?
So what we found is so as we've scaled up, we didn't have, just like with everything else, you don't know that these problems are going to be problems, and so suddenly you have essentially an information asymmetry problem. So the funniest example of this, I think, is also that it seems like to a degree, people both outside the company and our own people treat us, the 3 of us, as sort of like a hive mind.
Yeah.
So they'll tell Adam something just like off the cuff, and then it's sort of like
just assumed that all of us know.
within like some period of time,
Just propagate.
as a first some sort of connected server architecture. So, which is hilarious.
To be fair, it's
Because
roughly
not too far off.
In
but-
database terms, it's called eventually consistent.
Yeah. that's the system we've been operating on.
the problem is eventually isn't quite fast enough now.
As it turns out. Yeah. So a few things happened last week. I think Seth was told bits of info that were not eventually consistent.
Well, I assumed everybody else knew it.
So this is the other thing.
yeah,
We also
why would you
assume
know?
that, that each of us knows everything else, and so there's some information loss. So
obviously we need some systems.
Yeah. So we implemented, believe it or not, a calendar. Mind blowing. So now people know when things are happening, and no one has to tell anybody, which is really what we came down to.
So I was thinking about this because this is a really interesting optimization problem. So I was thinking about in Crashlands, when we first put in the lighting system, there were lights and there were things that could be lit by lights, right? And so it quickly became apparent that even just having a small number of lights in the game caused the frame rate to just completely collapse. I was like, why? Why is this? And it's because the system I had put together was basically, let's say you had like 2 lights and 10 things in the world. Each thing in the world would check each light to see how far it was from that light and what colors the light was emitting and stuff. And then it would sort of blend all the different lights together to illuminate itself, right? And so we had this combinatorial explosion of communication channels where if you now add a third light, then everything in the world is now talking to 3 lights instead of 2.
Mhm.
And then if you add another thing to the world, then that thing has to talk to every light, right? So you just have this sort of explosion of things talking to each other in a really stupid way. And it was just redundant information because every light had to say the same thing to everything in the world.
So how did you solve that?
So the way I solved it was basically to come up with a receptacle to dump all the light information into.
Mhm.
So I called it a light grid, where basically there's an invisible grid in the world, and every light just tells each grid position, hey, put my brightness and color into this particular area of the grid. And each light just dumps information into the grid. And then when a creature or something is walking around,
Pulls from the grid.
it just looks exactly where it's standing.
This is the calendar.
This is
It's a
caching.
calendar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
'cause
so-
you compute it once, cache it in a place that's really fast to retrieve information from.
Yep.
Yep.
And there you go.
And so the thing is, this should also happen in business, right? Where instead of if I need to know something, instead of me having to take time from other people and have them tell me that information, because it should be assumed that other people might need that information too. And if every time somebody needs information, they need to have a meeting with that person and take time away from that person, then that's just redundant, right? It's just like the creatures and the lights, right?
Interesting.
So
But
what
it's,
you
yeah,
need,
but it's even worse when multiple people need that piece of information, but you only tell one person because now you've now made it that person's problem
Now you have a
to
bug.
resolve all the asymmetry.
Yeah.
right?
now you have an
Everywhere
unlit
else.
creature.
Yep. Somewhere.
No one told me I was supposed to be bright yellow.
Yeah, I didn't get the memo on
Yeah,
that.
but if
Are
you
we
just
gonna have a
have-
meeting or what?
Right. But if you just have one entity, then now everybody only has to tell one thing
Yep.
and everybody only has to look at one thing.
Did we just show that the lighting system in Crashlands is the same thing as communication theory
Yeah.
in an office?
I mean, I've been saying it
Yeah.
the whole time. Like actually,
Yeah, Adam said that the whole time.
that game, that game
He won't
development,
shut up about it.
that game development and business
same thing.
are the same as all problems, right? I mean, when I left science to do this is just the same sets of problems that I was dealing with there, right? The parallel, it's not just parallel, it's just literally the same thing.
Yeah.
Just, you know,
Well, this actually
different
brings
set
us
of background.
this brings us to a podcast question.
Ooh, yeah.
Which is a great segue, Adam.
Ooh, nice.
You can ask questions at podcast@bscotch.net, by the way.
Yeah.
Podcast.bscotch.net. And if you have Bscotch ID, you can ask with that. And if you get your question answered, you get just a dope ass avatar.
Well, it's actually a
of
coffee
cup
avatar.
of coffee.
Yeah, it's not an ass.
It's not a
avatar.
dope ass. All right. So this question comes from Map5597. Adam, you're a
Yes.
scientist.
That's true.
Have you done any science at Butterscotch besides the statistics crunching wizardry?
Science is a way of approaching problems. It's not a thing that you do.
What does it mean to do science?
How do you do it?
What is science?
We're getting like deep into philosophy now, but yeah,
Can one truly know a thing?
no, one cannot truly know a thing,
Exactly.
which is
So why
really just
bother?
the key. No, that's exactly the wrong move.
Shit.
And
bad at
unfortunately, is the
science.
one that people misinterpret. People misinterpret the philosophical idea that you can't actually know things, right? They misinterpret that in exactly that way and say,
Then what's the
so
point?
everything is equal.
If I
can just
can't
do
know
whatever I
things,
want.
I may as well
Die.
be wrong as much as possible.
Well, but I mean, this is the rationale that like the ancient aliens people use, where they're like, we don't know how the pyramids got built, therefore aliens did it, right? Like that's now just a fine explanation because we don't know anyway, so any old explanation will do. Which is not at all the idea. The idea is when you are uncertain.
That's such a stupid way of thinking about
Well, explain
No,
why.
here's the thing though. Almost that's actually, I mean, that's like a really obvious, easy example of how stupid that is.
I
Right?
have no answer, therefore Santa Claus did it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but people do that for just everything all the time, right? This is
Yeah, it's
where
a common
Yeah,
thought.
no,
it's just
doesn't
easily-
make it less dumb.
no,
No. But you should explain why.
it's usually
yeah.
not as obviously dumb. But the idea is that if you don't, is when you recognize that you don't know how a thing works, then what you can do is then make a hypothesis about a approximation of how that thing works that you can then use to your advantage to sort of control and understand and manipulate that thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you simply use it to say, well, I don't know, and you throw your hands up and that's the end of the story, then you don't get to use that.
Then you're not
In any way.
doing science.
Yeah, and then in that case, that's okay actually to throw your hands up and just say I don't know. But then what the next move that you're allowed to make is just to not worry about that thing anymore, right? You don't get to then now just put some explanation on it, even though you don't have any idea.
So you can't say, I don't know, I have no evidence, and I have no reason to think this, but here's what I think.
Exactly.
You don't get to do that.
You don't get to do that. And in the cases where you just have a complete absence of knowledge and can't get at a thing, then your only option again is to just move on, or to use, your logic and common sense and what you do know to come up with just the best model you can. And then you have two options. One is you can go try to test that model, which is then kind of finishing out the scientific process, right? And the other one is you can say, there's no real good way to test this, because in the real world, there often isn't. And to say, you just say, I'm just going to operate using the best knowledge I have at my disposal.
Okay. So
using a model that I can come up with that seems fair, but the whole time knowing and being very aware of the fact that you don't actually know if that's the right.
Could be 100% wrong.
You could be 100% wrong.
Well, so this speaks to some of the stuff we've done. So one of the most recent things was we built different screenshots for Crashlands on mobile. Mm-hmm. And in Google Play, you can actually do A/B testing. So some people who visited the Crashlands storefront would see the original set of screenshots, and some of them would see this new set, which had essentially characters put in there. It's the one that's actually on the storefront now if you want to go see it. But it's the characters on there with little blurbs of text to sort of explain what's happening, because the truth is that a screenshot without context is kind of like looking at a painting. You don't really know what's happening.
It's a hard way to sell games.
It is. So they do with those little blurbs of text that they help provide context to a player, and theoretically should boost the amount of people who buy the game if they have a better understanding, or at least
not theoretically, because that's the problem is like theoretically is a blanket statement. It's actually under a particular theory, right? It's not just generally that will be the outcome. It's I have an idea. I have a belief that if people get more context, which we can provide via text, right, then they'll be more likely to understand and therefore buy the game.
Right. But there's an alternative explanation to this too, which would be that maybe people will actually buy it less, but it'll be more of the people who enjoy the game in the first place. Right?
Who knows?
So who knows? So the thing is, we put this experiment up. And we let it run for I think like 4 weeks or something. Mm-hmm. And the amount of data you need to actually have this be valid is much higher than you'd probably think at first blush. And so Adam, of course, knows this. So I pulled him over, I think within like a week, and I was like, "Oh, look, I think these are not working at all." And he looks at it, he's like, "You can't say that." There's just not enough information to say anything.
Yet.
You can't say anything.
Give
yet.
it more time, right?
Give it more time. So we let it cook. And then at the end of the 4 weeks or so, we couldn't tell any difference. And we collected a good amount of data. But so we just had this conversation. So this is sort of the end of, I guess, the art part of science, which is at the end of this, we said, okay, we have no ability to actually say whether or not statistically this is better for us to put these screenshots in. But we think that it puts a better foot forward for the studio. Yeah. To have slightly more professional looking screenshots.
Right. But the important thing was in the rationale we chose, right? Because we said, and it wasn't even that we can't tell, it's that there literally is no statistical difference between the way we presented that in terms of people buying it.
Which means we can just do whatever.
Now we can make our decision based on other criteria, which are
what do we like?
Yeah, what do we like? What do we want to present ourselves as? And now we can make the decision that way instead. So the scientific approach is all about choosing the metrics that make sense for the problem at hand, right? And measuring them when you can. And when you can't, just moving on and doing something else, or acknowledging that fact and
choosing the values.
So, but again, this doesn't mean, so if somebody comes to us and they say, "Hey, should I put screenshots in my game with or without that overlay text that explains the screenshot?" And we literally can't say to them, "Well, it doesn't matter."
Yeah.
Because all we can say is we did it. Well, and it seemed like in our case, it didn't matter.
Yeah.
But that may not be the case for you.
Yeah. Cause that's the idea of doing it scientifically, right? It's not making broad conclusions when you don't have a right to. But I actually want to follow up on that, because there was a funny thing that happened with these experiments, which is so the one that Sam was talking about, we actually did two experiments.
One was the icon.
Yeah. So one was we changed the icon for Crashlands, and one, the icon was just the fucking workbench, right?
It was the sawmill that's in the picture of the savannah that Hibbler painted.
Yeah.
So
that was our sort of like worst case, most boring.
Right. So that was my guess. Like, I'm going to put this in here because this should.
That was
underperform.
We thought of it as our negative control,
because it's literally a sawmill.
Right.
Yeah. Not exciting. It just on a face, it violates all the rules for icons.
And so violates all the rules that we've read from other people, right? Of what an icon is supposed to do. And then we had a few other variants that were much more similar to the one that we actually still have. And in the end, there was no difference.
There's no difference between a sawmill.
Yeah.
But again, but this only applies to Crashlands.
Only to Crashlands, exactly.
Because if, for example, if we were a free game,
that's what I was going to say. Because we followed up. Sam did this experiment with Quadrupus Rampage, where he changed the icon, and again, using quite different ones actually, So the one that I didn't even know he did this, but until I think just a couple days ago, I opened up I opened up the App Store to see what Crashlands was doing, and it said other games you might like because so it shows our other games in there, and I saw the icon for Quadrup's Rampage, which was Tack drinking coffee, which is our podcast taken out of our podcast picture.
It's supposed to be my negative control.
Yeah, exactly.
I was like,
Negative control.
I need to put the quadrupus
So
on here.
instead of an action shot, it's just the fucking
It's
quadrupus
Tack sitting on a log.
sitting on a log, sipping a cup of coffee.
But in this case, though, so then I was like, okay, now I need to go look up these results. And it turned out Sam had just forgotten he even did this, and
Yeah, I did forget.
so we collected actually plenty of data by this point and could see the result. And it wasn't so strong that it was definitely true, but it was pretty compelling that performed way worse actually than the original.
And way
icon
worse
did.
being like 2 to 3%, which of course in the free game.
Well, I
sense
guess
is
no,
like
it's way worse anywhere between 2 and 15%.
2 and 15. Yeah.
Because it's
You
a
can't
very
say.
wide margin of error, which is why we can't say like just how much, right? But it's clearly worse, right?
Mhm.
And so here we are in the context of this free to play action game where the icon's hilarious and cute, right? Like it's still a good icon versus in Crashlands, we're like, here's a fucking sawmill, right?
Right.
And somehow in one context, it seems to matter significantly. In another case, it clearly doesn't matter at all. But there's no obvious difference between the two, except the one very clear thing, which is pricing structure, right? Yeah. But it's also different games, different audiences, and who knows what, which is all to say.
And they have different review scores.
Different review scores.
So well, the important thing here is that it's like now we built a mental model from those 2 pieces of data.
Yeah.
It says, okay, maybe
Exactly.
the icon matters. Maybe the icon matters more for a free game than it does for a paid game.
Yeah,
Because
which we
people
can
are
then
more
test
likely
further
to
and other.
dive into the other information present in a paid game.
Yeah,
But again, that's just a maybe.
maybe.
But apparently the screenshots don't matter. So the question is like, what
Maybe.
the fuck matters if you're buying a paid game?
Yeah, but we have seen because
I don't know.
we've seen other people put up articles saying that doing their A/B testing and showing their results where they found that they got something ridiculous like a 15% boost.
Yeah.
But again, they're reporting these numbers without margin of error, and like what we've seen from these, our margin of error is very wide.
12%.
Yeah, and so if you're reporting a 15% boost, that might mean anywhere between like
2 and 15.
Yeah, 2 and 20, right, or whatever,
Right.
You might be just reporting the average because that's how people do. And so maybe actually most of the time it doesn't matter at all.
So you saying, Adam, that you essentially are always doing science at Butterscotch Shenanigans.
Yeah, no, I'm doing science every waking moment of
Adam
my life.
is science.
But
Well, everyone should be.
and this is what everybody should be. Yeah, because again,
Well,
science is an approach to the world.
The question is why, though? So this idea that everybody should be doing science.
Everybody
all the
should
time. Why?
science.
This is my question. Why?
Well,
Because it requires a lot of effort. I got to think about shit. I got to like look at things.
Well, it doesn't require effort once. It requires effort, I think, to establish the habit
yeah, like any habit.
of thinking about the world in this way. But once you do, then it's just the way you are.
It's also
Right,
the
why.
It's also the
What's
key
the fact?
way to not give fucks to the wrong thing.
Yep.
Mm.
And it's the way that you don't get manipulated into believing things that are to your detriment or that are just not true. Right.
And it's the way that you get to control the world around you.
I think that's to me the
Yeah.
biggest point. It's like,
Well, it's all, but these all kind of collapse together, right? Because
It just makes
when-
your life way fucking better.
absolutely your personal life, but also when you go now tackle a problem, if you're doing it with that mindset of questioning it as deeply as you can, identifying all the places where you could be wrong, and then doing your best to make models and hypotheses to sort of get at those things, but always remembering, no matter what, that the best case scenario is you have a decent model of the thing. You don't get to describe reality. That's just not a thing that's allowed. But you can come up with a model that, when tested and when you use it to try to manipulate the world around you, actually works
to some
some of the
degree.
time, right?
for some
And then you get to polish that thing and have it work more and more if you know how to think about what things should I be measuring, what things should I be tweaking, what am I allowed to say about this that has a rational and statistical and reasonable basis.
Or if it's in the case where you can't say anything about it on a statistical and rational,
then now you
reasonable
get the
basis,
personal freedom just to make a decision.
Yep. You get to say,
However
my
you want it to
values
be.
are X, therefore I'm going to do Y.
Yeah.
And it's also nice because it takes a lot of, I do think that a lot of people get uncomfortable with the idea of saying sort of out of the gate, like, I just don't know the answer to this question. And if I don't get the evidence that I need, then I just don't.
You
I just still don't know. Right.
Yeah.
And-
They want to say like, even though my data isn't great, at least I have some.
No.
So, right. And,
No.
and I saw this happen all the time in science when I was actually a scientist.
Because
working in a lab.
people want to latch on to some foundation of knowledge.
Well, I think more importantly, people want their work to be useful.
Yeah. They
And I
don't
think
want to feel like it's all in a black hole.
Yeah,
and
there's
it's,
a
going
problem.
nowhere.
There's just a general problem with like if you spend, especially in science, oftentimes you have weeks, if not years, of experimental
months
data.
and years typically. Yeah.
Which means that if at the end you come out and you're like, I can't tell the difference.
Yeah. Then you
After
just
2 years of
then
trying,
what you usually do is do a different kind of statistical test and see if you can
fake tell the
manipulate
difference.
the numbers.
Yeah.
But I think the important thing to note, and I think is why people have a hard time adopting this mindset, is because the most important thing you have to embrace is the idea that your ideas only have merit or only have value if they are demonstrably true. Right.
Yeah. Mhm.
And so just because you have an opinion about something doesn't matter. And you have to be okay with that as a person. And you have to be okay with the idea that if somebody comes to you and they say, hey, here's a whole bunch of really, really compelling evidence that is statistically accurate and is correct and whatever to the best of our knowledge, and it goes completely against this core thing that you believe, then you have to be okay with going, oh, I guess I was wrong, and just being fine with
Well, I
that,
think the other
right?
thing though is that not kind of like it was we've gotten to. I think the flip side of it though is that not everything is measurable. Not everything is demonstrable in any sort
and
of
then
context
there you
or way.
just make a decision.
Yeah.
There I think that's where the other side comes in, which is that you need to have sat down and said, what's actually important to me? What fucks am I willing to give about what things?
You need decision criteria.
Yeah, so that if someone comes to you and they say, hey, you got no data for us, I tried this experiment, turned up nothing. How do we want to proceed? That you have a filter where you could say like this, because these are my values. I don't need to worry about anything anymore. Like it's good. So you do the science, get your values, and then you're good to go.
Yeah, that's the only two things you need.
And the hard part is when the science goes against your values.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
That's-
and then you
and
have
that's-
to choose one.
And that's where people move away from science.
But the thing
right?
is, the
So
moment you do, you don't get to like
you don't get to tell,
you don't get to come back. You know.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is that this
Well,
is
because the fact is, you're just wrong.
yeah, you
I
just
mean,
you are
you're
just wrong.
just
now.
wrong.
Right.
Correct.
So
and then once you just choose, once you have decided that it's okay to just be wrong, if being right, or if accepting the thing that is right goes against some values that you have, like once that's true, like that's not true for anything. Anybody can convince you of fucking anything.
you are easily manipulated.
You're very easily manipulated, and that's how we've ended up in the world that we live in today.
Yay, we did it. All right, next question comes from Zarnoff. Zarnoff says, I was listening to the podcast the other day and I thought I heard you say you were going to make games for all the things. Does this mean that the next game will be out for Linux/Steam OS, or is that wishful thinking?
We're actually gonna put it on like the microwave, the number counter on the microwave.
Yeah.
We're gonna turn that into a game
Yeah, well,
space.
that plus Virtual Boy. And then
Yeah.
they're going to
They're talk to each other.
talk to each other.
Yeah, you could put your head in the microwave.
You
That's how
will
see it
probably,
for
you're going to
you.
need to Arduino your Virtual Boy to get it hooked up
That's
to
okay.
Wi-Fi.
We'll provide instructions though.
But yeah, I think so. When we say we're going to put on all the things, we mean all the major things. What
We
by
mean that
is-
if you are an average folk
Yeah.
in the world, then
can
you
play
will, at least one of the things that you own will be able to play.
because if you have a Linux computer, it's probably the case that I would guess that you have either an Android or an iPhone device,
Probably an Android.
or a
Probably an
Linux,
Android
or a Linux phone.
or a Linux phone, maybe a Windows phone. So say you got a Windows
your
phone.
own custom Raspberry
If
Pi
you have a
phone.
Windows phone and a Linux machine, I will be very amused.
You just won't
That's
be
the
able
most
to do
What are
anything.
you
hilarious combo.
doing?
But I think it's when we say all the things, we mean all of the major things that allow us to essentially mean we're still a small studio. So doing any of those things that require a lot of effort, even putting the game on GOG, for example, took quite a bit of time because we had to redo a bunch of the systems, provide a validation check, a bunch of other stuff. I think it took like a week or so to get the thing up there.
It took some time.
And maybe you'd be surprised, maybe not, probably not worth our week spent.
Well, I think importantly,
Well, it
From a
has
financial
it's cost
standpoint.
us more than
it's been a
than-
financial loss to put the game on GOG, but also importantly, people on the GOG forums have been attacking us since we put the game on there.
yeah, for taking a while to put it on there.
Yeah.
Which was
so,
weird.
we're just not going to do it anymore.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
we're
this is
moving
now
over it.
This is now why they can't have nice things.
They can't have nice things anymore.
Usually we're worried about why we can't have nice things, but this time, you just did this to yourselves.
Yeah. So I think this, there's always this question of like when we say all the things, whatever else, we want to hit the majority of users in the way that makes sense for us as a company and also keeps our sanity going. Because like it was so demoralizing to take the time to put it on a platform and then
just have people shit on us.
Yeah.
Not on the game, just on us as a studio.
For taking a while.
Yeah, if you want a good read, just hop on into the Crashlands GOG section there.
And then, we were hoping everything was going to go really well. And so I'm pretty sure in there we were like, I think we'll try to hit GOG on day one next time, which I know when we launch the next game, we're going to get a bunch of angry people pointing at that post. Like you said, you're going to do this. Yeah, that's before we realized and did some science on it and found out.
But I think
it wasn't
importantly,
a good move.
GOG as a company was fantastic to work
They
with.
were fantastic.
Yeah.
They were so good.
Well, that was a lot of it. Is we were really excited about it too because we're like, oh, this is the way that the company portrays itself, to its customer
great.
base and so on. But also the way made us really excited about it and they were fun to work with. But then also the way they portrayed their customer base as these like very loyal, like pleasant people who just want to get stuff on their platform and like love open and love talking to developers.
Which is probably true on average.
Which may be true on average, but then was not our experience, right? And so a lot of it was the contrast between expectations and then what we saw, coupled with the fact that it was actually a financial loss to do it.
So it was just kind of we just purely did a favor to that community, and
right?
Kind of got
kicked.
and
this is an important thing though that people, we've talked a lot in the past about anonymity on the internet and comments and all that kind of stuff and how these are just generally bad. But it's an important thing to remember that when you are in a community and you're interacting with somebody coming from outside that community, like in the case of GOG users interacting with us, putting our stuff there, right? You have represented that community.
Yeah, you are the ambassador from that community.
Yeah. And if somebody has a bad experience with you, right, in that community, and this is why like, Reddit has a really bad rap, right?
Yeah.
Because there's an enormous number of people there who provide a terrible experience for when other people come in. Even though as a platform, like it's a platform, right? It's not inherently bad. Right. And there's good stuff in it.
It's just a place where people talk.
It's just a place where people talk. But if you just come to the front page of the thing and like read a handful of comments and whatever, it is guaranteed to be the case that one of your first interactions with that thing is going to be really negative. Right. And that just makes the platform look bad.
Yep.
And so this is important. Like you should remember this. And if you're creating a thing where people can talk on it, other people who you don't control, just remember that if you let them do that, if you're GOG and have unregulated forums, people can just be assholes to the developers after they put their games on there. Right. Then people are not going to want to come to your platform. Right. We are not going to go to that platform because of that experience. And all that would have to happen is that GOG would have to say, let's just not have forums.
Yep.
Right. Problem solved. People can go yell somewhere else. Same deal with Steam. Actually, we stay out of the Steam platforms because they're so toxic.
The Steam forums.
Steam forums. Sorry. Yeah. The Steam forums. But the Steam reviews actually were overwhelmingly about the game and positive.
Yeah, they're fine.
And so we had a good response there. Right. But the forums should not be there. They don't need to be there.
The problem, it's not about critique. Like that's not the problem I have.
No, it's not about critique.
Even with Steam reviews or iTunes reviews, whatever, it's never about the critique that we get. Yeah. It's about the weird general sort of hatred that starts flying around for no reason because we're a developer and they're a player.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And there's something about like every platform kind of has its own interesting hangups, So it's like Android has this whole hang up against like iTunes, right? It's like, and then
took
GOG,
you long enough to get here.
Yeah, exactly. And then GOG has this hang up with Steam, right?
Yep.
And where they feel like every decision that is made, because actually we had another angry person who was upset that we don't have achievements or we don't have GOG achievements hooked up on GOG, right? We still have our own achievements because our own achievement system is on everything, but we haven't implemented the GOG specific one. And but their interpretation of this was just like was us intentionally sliding them. Like that's
because
what they believed
it would be free for us to put those achievements.
Therefore,
we just didn't do it.
Yeah, that we just
to make a point, right?
Which
is not true, obviously.
Which is not true, but it's interesting that every platform kind of has its suite of things that when we as developers or somebody as a person providing content to that thing, they come into this often not quite aware of all of the weird assumptions that the community has about stuff. And anytime they see you do something, they're going to attribute some motive to that thing that you
they're viewing it through the lens of the biases of the community that they're a part of.
Right. And so if you're not, and we saw this with the Crashlands launch all over the place, like we've talked about in the past with Steam and not properly having the game behave in a way that would be
We didn't have enough settings.
expected to
We needed more
PC users. That sort of thing,
We
right?
needed more settings and we needed controller support.
Yeah.
And as a result, because
launch.
of not having that, the assumption was that we didn't put those in because this is a shitty mobile game. It
Yeah.
came from mobile.
Yeah.
Yep.
And also that it was cheaper on mobile because we were deliberately
Price gouging.
punishing. This term was literally used. We were punishing PC players for playing on PC for
Yeah.
For
At
some
what
reason.
point, if you step back, for 5 seconds to think about that,
be like, is that true? Is this thing that I'm saying true?
reasonable?
Maybe people should be more scientific.
Yeah.
You know?
But it does mean, and it makes it's made us much more wary about entering new markets because
They take a lot more time and a lot more emotional energy than I think we realized.
A lot more,
I was
yeah.
like wrecked because I think I was running. They asked for us to be in the GOG forums on launch day.
Yeah, and there's a whole bunch.
So
of
I was in there. And so it was
assholes
just
that-
people being mean to me for like a fucking day. And I'm also trying to, run a studio because there were at the time 4 or 5, or I guess just the 3 of us at the time. So trying to like do other things.
Mhm.
And I was just like fucked up for like 2 days.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm not going back here. I just stopped paying attention. I didn't leave a note like, hey, I'll see you guys later. It's just like, I'm not.
Yeah. People
done.
don't think about there being a human being who had a hand in creating the game on the other
even when
end
they're
of it-
interacting directly with
on the other end
yeah.
of their forum post. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
Which is so when it comes to things like Linux support, right? We may someday, who knows? But the question there isn't because it's not a question of can we? Like, yes, we can put it on fucking anything. It doesn't matter, right? The question is there's going to be a large cost to us to doing that. And the question that we just have to decide every time this comes up is, are we willing and able to bear that cost right now? Right.
Mhm.
And we
It's
know
not
that when
just
we,
financial.
it's not just financial. If it was, then it would just be an easy question. You just take likely outcome minus the cost and leave it at that. Right. But it's not that at all. Instead, we know there's going to be some sort of emotional fallout of some sort, right?
Always
Where
is.
we're going to get attacked by somebody for something we don't understand about these stupid assumptions that community is making. And so the first thing that is going to happen when we put it on Linux is that people are going to yell at us because of how long it took first.
Mhm.
And then second, they're going to yell at us because it doesn't work on their weird as
Their
fuck
particular homebrew weird ass version. Yeah.
And
you'd be like, hey, I use a 45-degree slanted monitor
Yeah.
that is curved. How come you guys didn't take my Linux machine plus monitor configuration into
Mhm.
account?
yeah. And so, yeah, it's just at some point it becomes not worth it. And we support the platforms that we have because they are the enormous platforms, right?
Yeah.
Where we have to, because those are also, they have not been fun to deal with, right?
No.
In many respects. But for us to be successful and viable as a company, that is now a price that we just have to pay.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so wherever we don't have to pay a horrible price, we're just going to choose not
But
to.
again, I mean, this also comes back to it's just a general problem. And I remember Jeffrey Lynn from Riot Games talks
Mhm.
about this a lot because League of Legends has a big problem with having a toxic community, and they always have. And Jeffrey Lynn, who was their lead psychologist, I
Mhm.
think he gave a lot of talks at GDC and stuff like that about just what exactly it means to try to sort of wrangle this toxicity in a community. And I think the problem is that basically inevitably a community just becomes toxic
If there's not,
without any enforcement mechanisms
Yeah,
because
right.
because what basically happens is and he put it in an interesting way because he was like, okay, so in a League of Legends game, you've got 5v5, right? And all it takes is one person
having a bad day.
having a bad day.
or just being an asshole. I don't think having a bad day is an
That's the
excuse.
way
I think
that's the
it's
way
just-
he put it.
Sure.
Yeah, for me, it was
Well,
like,
the
okay,
reason they said
it
it's
takes
not,
one asshole.
the reason they said it's not
basically.
people being assholes is because if you look at the data, most people just have like a bad day.
As in they're good, they're fine most of the time.
Yeah,
and
even
then
positive to play with most of the time, and then like one day, they're just
one
like,
day out of 20,
they just need to
go
win,
off on their
you know?
team.
Yeah.
And so the
It's
problem
not
there
true,
is like,
man. I mean, are assholes generally just assholes constantly?
There are a few people,
yeah,
There are some, yeah.
who are more regularly assholes, but I think across, if
I
you
think
just look at,
it's a spectrum. You know, people have
Yeah, yeah.
different degrees of filters that they will apply.
it's kind of, it's kind of like
in
how if
different
you put like
circumstances.
30 people in a room, or 23 people, there's a 50% chance that 2 people have the same birthday, right? Which is weird.
Yeah.
Seems very odd that it only takes that many people. I think it's the same thing where it's like, say you're a dick one day out of the year on average. You put 23 people in a room, there's a very good chance
Yeah, you got two.
you get 2 dicks in that 23 person pile, you know? Like, that's
But-
the terrible
But then it
math.
doesn't even matter because you only need one anyway.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
as I said,
because the problem is it cascades. You know, one person being mean to their teammates causes that team just to break down, right? And so then another person will get upset by a person, you know, the first person.
Now they're more likely to be.
And then they
In
may
future
either
matches,
they
too.
may either sabotage their team, or they may start talking shit to the other team, right? And then that person will get upset, and then they start yelling at their teammates and the other.
So here's a
team.
question: Is there actually an optimal team size that would help reduce
One.
toxicity?
Yeah, it's one. Which is, I mean, that is why a large reason that we are so comfortable making single player games, and why we don't intend to make competitive.
Well, because if you're having a bad day, the game can actually make your day better,
Right.
instead of
Yeah.
worse, right?
Yeah.
So there is that.
Which
But
is
yeah,
nice.
so you have this problem where out of even just a group of 10 people, the probability of having a angry person in there, an aggressive, angry, mean person,
Basically,
is almost
Yeah.
guaranteed, right? And the second sort of cascading effect from this is people who don't want to put up with that leave. They just stop. They just stop participating in the community.
That's
right?
why I don't involve myself in that game.
Yeah, and
Or maybe
so
like it.
My best friend plays. He just mutes. He just mutes the whole thing.
and so you end up with this problem where over time, a community that even is well intentioned at the beginning, as soon as there's any leeway given to that kind of behavior, it just starts creeping and creeping until eventually there's not really anybody left. Right. So
The shit.
what do you do?
You just got to put a bunch of systems in place to try to guard against it as much as possible, and then occasionally, bring down the banhammer.
Yeah, well,
Quit putting up with shit.
but our strategy is a different one entirely, which is to do that, but also just to actually use that fact as a design constraint.
Yeah.
Right. Where we say we can't make a good competitive multiplayer game because a toxic will be community.
Because people are mean to strangers.
Because people are mean to strangers. And we have two options. So one is we can then design and build a whole bunch of systems to allow us to do that anyway, that somehow mitigate the fact that people are mean to strangers. The other one is we just don't do that at all.
Done.
And
Sign me up.
instead we try to make games where it doesn't matter that people are mean to strangers, because either they just can't talk to each other, right? So there's just no interaction, or
They won't interact with strangers.
or they won't interact with strangers by making it so you can only work within friend networks, and or making it only a communal effort so that people work together on stuff,
No matter what.
and it doesn't feel, and people can still be jerks to each other because if their teammates not pulling their weight, right? But again, that's now another design constraint, which is you can make a game so that it's balanced in such a way that if somebody just sucks and is playing the game terribly, it's fine. Right. And so by doing that, then you basically just remove all the reasons for people to be mean to each other and make it so that it actually becomes very costly to do that, because now you only hang out with your friends. Your friends say you're a jerk, you get kicked out, right?
You don't get to play with them.
You don't get to play with them anymore. And if we start building systems that on top of that make it so that if you get kicked out of lots of friend groups, you just don't get to be in any anymore. And so there's all kinds of stuff that we can do on top of that to actually add systems.
Speaking of people being mean to strangers, this reminds me of, so we added the random friend button, right? On
Oh,
Bscotch
yeah.
ID, because we were like, we want to give people an option to just find more Bscotch ID friends.
If you're like a new person in the network, for
Yeah, so you just
example.
join, you're like, oh, I don't have any friends. And you just hit a button that says, match me up with a random friend. And every now and then we'll get a report from a user who they add a random friend, they get matched up with somebody who also hit the button. Like
Yeah,
it
it's
doesn't
opt in.
Yeah, you have to opt into it from both sides. So
Yep.
both people have to say, I want to
Mhm.
be paired with a random friend. So somebody will get matched with a random friend. They get a message that says, hey, we just got matched up through the random friend finder. And they'll just go, fuck you.
Yeah.
It's like, what?
It hasn't happened for a while, but there was a back in when we first were launching everything, it was like a couple times a week.
Yeah, where somebody would
We would-
opt into the random friend finder and then just attack the person they got matched.
So weird.
Really
Man.
I banned all those people permanently though.
Yeah. All right.
I
Well,
was like,
let's
Wait,
hit,
Adam wants to answer the one question that's been at the top of the list for like 3
Oh
years.
yes. Yeah, there's been a question at the top of the
I think it's
podcast
from our
list
Carnix.
just for fucking ever.
our Carnix.
Yeah.
What is the current highest Bscotch ID level possible, and has anyone attained it?
82 and no, but I think 2 people have gotten to 80.
So, because he also said, if not, challenge accepted.
The 2 that have not been got are the ones that just require buying enormous numbers of butter ups,
Which are
is
no
now-
longer possible on iTunes.
correct. Turns out it's a violation of their store policy, but
Whoops.
it is still
Whoopsies.
doable on Android. And so I don't know. We may.
I think we
might
could
take those
say
out.
that 80 is.
I
the
think
highest.
80 is
80 is
the
probably the highest.
80 is the true highest, really.
Because
So,
like gifting is weird now. No, they won't let us gift.
Yeah.
And it was supposed to be just like a fun thing, not supposed to be like spend a shitload of money on us. It's supposed to be like, you're such a cool person for gifting the game to a
Which
billion
is
people.
also why those perks are hidden, because we didn't want
Exactly.
people feel like they had to do it or something, you know.
Right.
And it's also why we don't tell you how many perks there are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Until now.
You don't even know there are missing perks. Well, yeah, I mean, our podcast listeners, right? But yeah, the idea is like, it's not a thing you have to do. It's just for fun and so on. But those do exist. And I'm pretty sure nobody has either of them.
Well, what I'm also interested in is there's going to be a time years from now
Mhm.
where maybe like roid rage isn't around anymore.
Mhm.
Right. Because we may have to retire old games
Mhm.
because they take time to maintain and stuff like that. And when we have 20 games in our portfolio, you know, keeping alive the tiny arcade game that we made in 2 days
Might be
10
less.
That
years
makes
ago
$1 every month.
might not be worth it anymore.
Mhm.
So, you know, you just make sure you're in on the ground level, folks. You
Yeah.
know, make sure you get
Get
those.
those perks before they're
All
gone.
right, so I just want to hit one more to
Sorry.
kind of come down from the people are mean to strangers train.
Okay.
And on a good note.
Uh-huh.
This is from Space Bat.
Oh yeah, space.
Space Bat.
Coast to coast.
Space Bat says, I tend to take a lot of notes whenever I get a game design idea, on the off chance I might be able to use it someday. This leads to a lot of lists of random thoughts and text files. How do you organize your ideas? Do you take physical or digital notes?
Both. So physical usually in the moment.
You always got to have a little notebook in your
You
back
know why?
pocket.
It's because when you pull out a piece of paper notebook, it's not going to have a bunch of notifications from your friends being like, hey, look at this cat picture I just found.
Oh, you got a message. You got a text message.
Yeah, I found every single time I pick up a phone to type notes into it, I'm doing something else.
Well,
And
this
I'm
is
like, what
becoming a
happened?
problem for me too, because now when I try to search for things on Google, as soon as you click the text box, it pops open a list of trending
Yeah.
topics, right?
And you're like, oh,
So now all of a sudden I'll be like, I need to search for something, and all of a sudden it's like
Rex Tillerson.
Rex
China.
Tillerson, China. What?
So really, you guys' problems
What
is
happened
that
with
you're
that?
too observant. Because I actually I don't notice any of this when I'm like opening. Literally all my alerts are turned off. I don't even know that I have new text messages unless I open up my messaging app, because it doesn't even have an icon anymore.
I want to just.
So
Is there a way to just turn off just every notification?
Yeah.
Just period.
yeah.
Oh wait, I
there's
can just get a flip phone.
There's also just a global switch that literally just says turn off all notifications.
Interesting. Okay, so
Oh shit,
so
I'm gonna do
you should
that.
go do
Adam's
that.
gotten over this, but I think
also, I think I have a totally different response to this, which is I actually don't purposely record any of my ideas anymore because I have so many.
Who cares?
But it's true. Like, and when you're saying I have so many ideas I have to be making and managing lists, right?
When was the
What
last
that
time
means
you
is
went
that-
back in and you were like, I need an idea?
Let me go find
Let me go
one.
find
Well, I think
one.
there's a difference here though, because I think nurturing the sort of creative brain that's just spewing shit out is a good thing to do, because
Yeah.
being extremely generative with your thoughts is good.
Yeah.
I think the
note
important thing
taking
is
is a form of thinking,
it is
not a form of historical archiving.
I think that's the difference. This is writing and generating all your ideas down is an exercise
in changing
is
your brain.
strengthening your brain for doing cool stuff. Most of that stuff is garbage. In fact, 99% of it you will never ever look at ever again.
Even the stuff
Anytime-
that isn't, you got other good ideas. Doesn't matter if you
I
leave.
mean,
it forever.
I cracked open, I found one of my journals from like 3 years ago, and I looked through it. I think on every page, there's new ideas, there's new stuff, new lists of things I need to go do.
Yep.
That I know for a fact did not
Did
ever
not-
do.
Never
right?
did it. Yeah.
But there's
Okay.
another interesting point here, which is if you were to take any of these sort of, because I can almost guarantee that these are sort of like one line game ideas, right?
Mhm.
It's like you thought of something like, oh yeah, like space shooter, but really you're a duck
Yeah.
or something, and then which could be cool.
Was
and
that
then
duck, the shooter duck game or whatever?
duck hunt,
duck.
yeah, shooter duck duck
goose,
right?
right?
Shooter,
Is
duck,
that it?
Duck, duck, shoot.
duck shoot. So the fact is, if you were to actually say, okay, I'm gonna just take a whole page of a notebook and flesh this idea out, what you'll discover is that it's not really an idea.
Yeah.
Right? You'll
It's a thought.
start to go through it and you'll be like, oh shit, I don't know. I don't have any clue how this would actually come together.
But by spending some time with, I prefer typing. Actually, I don't like using a notebook because it's too slow.
The research has shown that writing in a notebook is better for generative thoughts.
yeah,
than
some
that.
fraction.
I
of the
like
time
I
for some
like that
subset
it's,
of people.
I like that it's slow because I have to think more
Yes.
while I do it.
Anyways,
I have
continue
more
then.
time to think while I'm doing it.
Well, I guess
Yeah.
I don't quite understand. I don't understand putting the bottleneck on writing.
Every word has to matter.
You're
more.
bottlenecking your thoughts for some
Hey,
reason.
when you
But
can
anyway,
when you can type 300 words per minute like me,
Hey, Adam, I'm telling you,
Yeah.
science.
this is your own.
I thought you were a science man.
Yeah, no, but there's data, and there's also I don't know what the data is from the science, but if it's psychological research, it's probably not. Let's be honest.
Can't be
here.
doing that. Can't be dropping that shit.
Let's
Go
be
ahead.
honest
All right.
here. I mean, statistically speaking, it is true based on the meta studies that have been done of that research that the vast majority of it is not reproducible.
Yes.
that's because
So-
the acceptable correlation coefficient for a psychology paper is 0.4,
No, it's 0.5.
0.5.
0.5.
I hope you mean 0.05. Yeah,
You're
but
talking about correlation? Yeah. Yeah. Correlation is much weaker in psychological and social research.
Which means it's less
Nothing.
predictive.
Anyway,
and
sorry.
the excuse for that is humans are noisy, so
so
let's
messy.
just accept. Let's just reduce our
Just throw the bar lower.
exactly. let's just draw the bar lower.
Well, otherwise you can't draw any conclusions, right? It's about building mental models for stuff.
Yeah, no, but remember, there's an important thing. You shouldn't build a conclusion
Off
based
of-
on data you don't trust, right? You're better off
Just saying,
saying whatever you want, which
you're
in my
better off-
case,
you're better off just saying people are messy and we don't know.
exactly.
But that was what you do for everything. Then you wouldn't have any psych field research at all.
Yes.
Exactly.
You guys are
Get out.
No, there is good research being done. I would never say there isn't any. But
Anyways,
I
back to your point.
but I will not change my behavior based on a psych study. Almost ever. Unless what that thing shows is also consistent with what my experience is.
Well, and
Um,
reproducible.
And reproducible. But again, when it comes out of this kind of stuff, it's all hard to believe anyway, right? So, but if it's consistent with what it takes for you to go out and live in the world and do things, right? So for me, I have like tried writing longhand to try to put my ideas out, right? But all it does is make me frustrated how slowly I write stuff because
And then your
my
thumb
mind
cramps
is
up.
you get
right?
that like pinching cramp right here.
Yeah.
But when I'm typing stuff though, because I can type still not as fast as I can think, right? But way faster than I can write. Then I can type stuff up, and it also allows me to sort of mold the thing that I'm making because I can then, as I'm thinking, I can then restructure stuff and do that sort of thing, right? And so it becomes a much less linear and much less bottlenecked way for me to kind of think while writing. But I would never say this is the way that everybody should do it because that's just the way.
Because you just can't say that.
because I can't say that.
Yeah.
You keep
You
track
do,
of
you
notes
do
and
whatever's
stuff.
good for you.
Back to the question though. To keep track of notes and stuff, I do use Workflowy for everything. So I just put them all in an inbox.
I put it in my Gmail.
and then or Gmail works.
Mm-hmm.
Seth uses Todoist, I think. And then I put them in I make a little section in Workflowy, which is just a list of lists called inbox. And then when I'm just thinking about random stupid shit, then I just put it in the inbox. And then later, every week when I come back to it, look through my inbox and I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. That's usually what my response is to almost every single one of the notes I generate. It's like,
Yeah.
no, I
Well,
got
so
time for that.
in Todoist, I have 3 projects. I have the Quest for Gains, which is for health related
Mhm.
tasks, right? So if I think of something that I need to do or whatever, that goes in the Quest for Gains. Then I have the Quest for Brains, which is where I have all
If
of
you're a zombie.
Yeah,
and you-
right.
yeah. The quest for Brains is, of course, anything relating to just learning knowledge, like books to look into, documentaries to watch, just stuff that's going to expand my
Brain.
brain. It's gonna sort of massage my lobes,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
You gotta get that good daily lobe massage.
Exactly. And then last is the Quest
Get
for
it in all the
Games.
creases.
Oh, the quest for games.
The Quest for Games is the
Mhm.
last one, which is stuff related to game development
Mm-hmm.
and learning in that field. So it's kind of it's a repository for all of my
Yeah, I mean, I used to keep track of like the stuff that I wanted to get to, that kind of thing. But I realized that just like the present is the bottleneck, and so any moment where I have like some time to do a thing, I don't need to go refer to a list, so I can just be like, what is it that I would like to be doing right
Well,
now?
yeah,
And then I can just go do
Well,
that.
the thing
said
is,
that's a
I
joke.
literally never look at these
Yeah,
lists.
yeah.
Ever.
Yeah.
I don't.
Well, we
I
make
put
the joke-
things into it, and then sometimes, like a year later, I'll go back and I'll like when I'm putting a thing in, I'll be like, "Oh yeah, I read a couple of these books," and then I'll check them out. Right?
Well, again, the thing is that it's about the exercise, not about
Yeah.
the archive.
Putting it
Yep.
down on paper, putting it down somewhere is sufficient.
Just because remember, as
to
we've
lock
said
it
before,
in.
the back burner is actually an
It's an
incinerator.
incinerator.
Yeah, that absolutely
That's fine
is.
because you need heat.
This
You
reminds
just
me-
burn stuff.
That's right.
This
Just
reminds
throw
me
your energy
of-
from
yeah.
burning your ideas.
In the book, The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up.
Mhm.
In that book, the author talks about
Marie Kondo.
she talks about getting rid of books because people will buy a book and never read it, and then they will keep it forever on their shelf. And the rationale behind her sort of like get rid of this book argument is the purpose of you buying that book was to learn that you didn't want to read it. That's why you have it. Right. And it has served its
In
purpose.
the case that you didn't read it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you did read it, then obviously you also don't need it because you read it already.
Yeah.
So she's like, yeah, just that book taught you what it needed to teach you,
Which is that you don't.
which is that you don't give a shit about what's in this book. So just get rid of it and move on with your life and quit living in the past. You know?
Yeah.
But similarly, writing down an idea, it doesn't mean you have to make a game out of it.
Mhm.
It was a lesson for you. You took the time to do that. You locked it into your brain. Maybe it'll spark something later or whatever. Maybe not.
It's just the exercise. Well,
But just move on.
Yeah, one final thing on this. One of our game dev buddies who made Looney Dungeon, Sam Pavlan, I believe is how you say his name.
Palavan.
Palavan. Sam has this Twitter thing running where for every retweet that this one particular thing gets, then which is essentially saying, I will come up with a terrible game idea every time this gets retweeted. He comes up with an extremely terrible game idea. But some of them, of course, on accident, actually sound extremely compelling.
Yeah.
But I think he's up to like 400 right now. Isn't there a lot?
500 something.
500? So anytime someone does this, it's like daily. I think it's probably got like 3 or 4 of these things where it's about the generative exercise of doing this. And I'm sure it's
Well, and
doing
he is
something
also now coming up with a thing called the Somjom.
for it. Oh, is he going to do some of those?
Where he took all of the terrible game ideas he came up with and he got them all printed onto business cards. And then he at GDC was going around and handing a card to different people that he met. And he was like, just keep an eye because I'm going to announce when
Did we get one of these cards?
I got one.
Okay, good.
Yeah, my card was that it's an RTS game. It's an RTS clicker game where every time you click it summons a random unit that does something that you can't control. I was like, yeah, we
can swing
we
that.
can make the shit out of that game. Yeah, so he's going to start the Somjom where at a certain point he's going to announce that if you got one of these cards, then the jam is going to start and then you got to make that game.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
Yeah, so it's about the generative act.
Yeah, you have an infinite well of ideas. You're not missing out on anything by not going back and looking at the ones you've already had.
But keep your mind sharp.
simply having the idea is sufficient.
Yeah, it changed your
It's about
brain.
the journey.
Your brain changed when you did it. That was what you needed.
All right, we've
Yeah.
got significantly over. Let's
Yeah,
wrap
we
this
have.
up.
Thanks everybody
Louise.
for listening. This has been Coffee with Butterscotch. And I also want to say thank you to Monique for organizing our questions and also to Fat Bard for editing the podcast. I feel like maybe we should start thanking the people who help
Probably
us
a good idea.
Yeah,
put this.
classic pod. That also means we should start then telling everybody, please leave us a review on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts.
We do need more reviews.
Yeah, and also this podcast was sponsored by
Butterscotch Shenanigans.
Yeah.
Butterscotch.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it was produced by Butterscotch Shenanigans.
Well, Fat Bard.
Fat Bart. Does it make him a producer? I guess it might.
I don't know what a producer does.
Yeah, I don't know
Nobody
either.
knows. Anyways, leave us some reviews and tell your friends about this, and we'll see you next week.
See you next week.
Okay, bye.
Bye.